town hall. This topic is on fentanyl, the fentanyl crisis, and what can we do about it? What are we doing about it? What are resources for parents and for other individuals who are looking for how to help themselves or help family members? Fentanyl and teen overdose have become all too familiar through headlines and conversations across the nation. As both a father of two teenagers and a public servant, the urgency of this matter strikes me very deeply. In recent times, discussions surrounding the crisis have extended with the policy chambers and political circles. Elected leaders, community leaders, and our neighbors are engaging in conversations underscoring the gravity of the situation. And the federal government declared the opioid crisis a public health emergency way back in 2017. Myself and the legislature, along with Governor Newsom, have dedicated more than $1 billion to fighting the opioid crisis by working to remove opioids from the streets, providing resources to California communities in need, and increasing education and awareness to prevent harm. In last fiscal year, the Department of Healthcare Services is investing more than, with this 2022-23, investing more than $558 million in various opioid prevention and treatment activities, including making test strips, fentanyl test strips, as we'll discuss, more available. California recently declared a select committee on fentanyl, opioid addiction, and overdose prevention. And it's clear that this is not just a local, but a pervasive concern that demands our collective attention. The stark reality is that overdoses have skyrocketed over the last decade. In the U.S. overall, drug overdose deaths increased 30% from 2019 to 2020 and 15% in 21, resulting in an estimated 108,000 deaths in 2021 alone. Among persons aged 14 to 18, overdose deaths increased 94% from 2019 to 2020 and 20% from 2020 to 2021. In San Mateo County, we saw 134 fatal overdoses in 2021. And unfortunately, that number has dropped down in 2022, but still quite significant. And overall in Santa Clara County, 373 total accidental drug overdoses last year. Fatal overdoses from drugs like fentanyl, codeine, morphine have doubled in Santa Clara County. So we've also seen a proliferation of counterfeit pills resembling prescription drugs, unfortunately containing what they call IMFs, illicitly manufactured fentanyls. Social media has become a popular space for purchasing these IMFs, which have increased fatal overdose risk among adolescents. IMFs have been the primary culprits in overdose-related overdose-related fatalities in many cases, and the potency is what is just kind of mind-blowing about fentanyl. It's a staggering 50 times stronger than heroin. I was amazed when I hear these numbers, and 100 times more potent than morphine. That makes it a cheap and addictive, but also tragically lethal. And it's unsettling to grasp that amount as minuscule as a few grains of sand holds the power to trigger a fatal overdose. This heartbreaking reality hit home. We lost a life right here in our community in August of 2021. 17-year-old Colin Walker of Belmont, a senior at Carmont High School, tragically succumbed to an accidental overdose. And this devastating incident was a chilling reminder that our community is not immune, certainly, to this epidemic. Many of us have stood beside friends and family members battling the grip of opioid use. The fentanyl crisis ranks among the most formidable challenges to public health and safety in our time, and it compels us to delve deeper into the nuances. So today we'll be discussing why do individuals turn to these substances, what drives the allure of this, how can we protect ourselves and our family, what is happening in our communities, in our schools, and many, many more. And understanding the mechanics of the drug is crucial too, comprehending their potency, their risk, and the relentless grip that they can exert. Our foremost objective must be prevention, understanding the root causes that lead to opioid use, and ensuring that our youth and communities don't tread down this path. Together, we have a gathering of experts, esteemed elected officials, and devoted community members to join in our dialogue. Our intention is clear: to enlighten ourselves about the intricacies of the fentanyl crisis, and more importantly, to what is transpiring right here in Santa Clara County and San Mateo County. We're here to explore strategies that emphasize prevention, to uncover treatment options available, and collectively talk about the blueprint to combat this epidemic. As we continue the conversation, let's remember that behind each one of these numbers, behind each statistic, lies a life, a story that deserves to be told, a future that can be rescued. Let our discussions and actions today pave the way for a safer, healthier, and more resilient California. Thank you. Thank you all for here today and who will watch this in the coming days and weeks. I'd like to briefly introduce our panelists: Dr. Wendy McNerney, PhD, psychiatry and behavioral science researcher at the VA in Palo Alto and at the Stanford University School of Medicine; Supervisor Otto Lee from Santa Clara County; Superintendent of our schools, Nancy McGee in San Mateo County; and parent activist Ed Turnen, president of Song for Charlie; and Liz Walker from the Colin Walker Memorial Foundation. Many people in our district wrote in with questions about fentanyl abuse, and we will get to as many of these as possible. But first, we'd like to hear from each of our panelists and have a discussion. So our first panelist is Dr. McNerney. I mentioned a little bit about her. She's primarily interested in the neurophysiology and biochemistry of brain and mental health diseases, especially degenerative diseases, along with depression, TBI, PTSD, and addiction. She's collaborating with researchers to integrate brain imaging and biochemical markers in hopes to better understand these diseases. She's also taken a lead role in investigating the biochemistry of magnetic brain stimulation. Welcome, Dr. McNerney.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for hosting this event. So in addition to all of my biochemistry research, I also teach some classes about addiction and substance use disorder. And basically, I believe that substance use disorder is exactly what happens when the biology intersects with everything that's wrong with society right now. And so we get this horrific relapsing neurological condition that not a lot of people are talking about. I was reflecting on this last night, and I was thinking about how in 2018, 2019, most of my class, especially the class about opioids, centered around big pharma, how addiction works in the brain, a little bit about overdoses. But now we are focusing on fentanyl and we are focusing on overdoses because the landscape has shifted very, very rapidly. And I'm a scientist who's out here putting myself out there because I care about the community and I care about what's happening to the community. And I believe that because this is a biological and psychological phenomenon, nobody should overdose, right? It's one of the most leading preventable causes of overdose that we have. And it doesn't matter if you're, a student trying to study, if you're, if you have an addiction and you're doing your best to combat cravings and really, really strong symptoms, or if you're at some sort of music event and somebody gives you a rainbow pill and tells you it's magical, nobody should die. And so that's why I'm here. I think if we all come together and discuss this from a biological front, which is my role, and a sociological front, we can come up with real solutions that'll work. So thank you.
Thank you. And I appreciate that. And you mentioned it's very personal for me as a parent of two teenagers. And you've been speaking in schools recently. And what are you telling? Are you speaking to teachers, to students, and what are you telling them?
Yeah, so I've been doing a couple of rounds at the local high schools. So Los Gatos High School was one, and recently Palo Alto High School. And I tell them about what fentanyl is doing to the brain, that it is a very, very potent opioid, and that it is more potent than any of the, other like morphines out there, which you covered. And the reason why it's so potent is because it's a small molecule and it's easy to make. And we see that it is associated with blocking of pain and the pain signal. And we have an epidemic of pain in this country. We have an epidemic of psychological pain in this country. And this is the best that we have to help with pain. But unfortunately, because opioids are so inhibitory, they also shut down your brainstem. and inhibit your brain's ability to regulate breathing. So when you mix in a potent opioid into the body, it basically people are going to overdose from respiratory depression. I should also address the fact that this is related to addiction. And opioids, not only do they decrease pain, but they increase dopamine. And so they increase the pleasurable kind of sensation in the brain. So put those together, right? Put together the fact that opioids can reduce pain and add a pleasurable sensation. And you get people who are in a lot of psychological pain or physiological pain, and you give them some way to feel better. And you can kind of really think about how somebody would turn to a substance like this.
Yeah. And what form are young people, Catherine asked, taking it? Is liquid, powder, patches? I mean, or is it all just accidental? What? Anything you could say on that?
Yeah, I mean, all forms, I would say. You could inject it with heroin or cocaine. It's tainted that way. There are patches. Those usually I don't see with adolescents. The most common method of administration for the adolescents is tainted pills or contaminated pills. They order online. They think they're getting, Percocet online or a study aid online, and it's been contaminated. So most of the time, not all of the time, with the younger population, it's associated with kind of accidental contamination of some sort of pressed pill that they order through TikTok or whatever.
And does it resonate when you explain the brain chemistry, or do they have questions? Is there what is resonating with them when you talk about this?
I think the big thing that I want to push is that there is biology behind this. That there is a biological reason why people are seeking out this medication recreationally, maybe to alleviate symptoms of depression, anxiety. And then what happens is that your brain adapts to the fact that you're taking this substance, and now you have to worry about maintaining a homeostasis, and you have to worry about not having withdrawal symptoms because your brain has changed. Your physiology has changed. And one thing that a lot of people think is that addiction or substance use is like a failing of willpower. Like, why can't these people care about themselves and stop? And it's not that simple. They're fighting against some really, really strong biology to the point where they're taking substances just to feel normal or to feel okay, rather than to, go out and party or to do whatever it is that they want to do. So there's a big distinction there. And also, the fact that there are medications people can take if they have an addiction to opioids. FDA approved medications that work extremely well that not many people know about. And the other thing that I think is resonating to people is that Narcan, which we will talk about, is an antidote. It works. Think of it as a defibrillator. Think of it as a way to save somebody's life and as a means to give somebody another chance.
Yeah. And we will talk later about what we're doing, try to get Narcan more in more schools and more places in the community. When you talk about those brain changes, and that's the thing that took me a while to understand as well, how quickly can that happen? Could that happen from one use or 10 uses or whatever, repeated use? I mean, how quickly does that brain chemistry change?
It's a multi-tiered process of change. Unfortunately, it's really complicated. So because something like fentanyl is so potent, you'll get changes pretty quickly. You'll get receptor and protein expression changes, within a few minutes to a half an hour of somebody taking it, especially since your brain will release things like norepinephrine to help keep you alive. But in terms of addiction with chronic use, you can start seeing changes like loss of neurons and brain structure changes that take, and I don't know how long, it depends on the person. It could take 30 days, it could take longer. So think of it as like a cascading sets of changes, some of which are very, very quick and some of which are longer term.
And when you talk about some of those FDA approved treatments, is that like naloxone, or is that type of, is that kind of what you're thinking about, and how do they work to help stem that addiction, I guess?
These are they're called medications for opioid use disorder. They include things like buprenorphine, methadone, naltrexone. They are, for the most part, longer acting partial opioids. So they will bind to the same opioid receptor, but won't activate the receptor as long. So they do things like reduce cravings, but also prevent overdose. There's a lot of restrictions in terms of who can get these medications because they are in fact an opioid, but they work remarkably well. They are really good at saving lives. If your receptor is occupied by buprenorphine, it's harder to overdose from fentanyl. They do things like reduce cravings. They kind of reduce that compulsive behavior that comes with addiction. So they're extremely important, but also highly stigmatized. And I wish they were more readily available to individuals.
Yeah, we are working on that. And I did do a visit to Portugal. So we had some questions writing about that and what Portugal did. And I don't think we're moving in that direction with, full legalization, but we did visit these mobile clinics they have where people come every day and they get the buprenorphine or whatever you're talking to, and again, that lets them just live a normal life, but they basically need that on a, I don't know if it's daily or weekly basis, essentially to live a normal life.
It's pretty much daily. You can get a take-home prescription for buprenorphine, but for methadone, you have to go every day to a specialized a specialized dispensary, which is kind of humiliating to the individuals. And like, if you have to, and it's only open until like 9 a.m. And so it's really, really hard to get to. So I think methadone, we need to figure out a better way to get access to that.
Good. Well, maybe the supervisor has some ideas on that, and I know we do have some legislation on that we're working on as well. Stacy, by the way, writes in from Kaiser Permanente that the emergency departments dispense Narcan to anyone who asks. So another resources that are coming in, actually helpful, that we may not know about. I certainly don't always know about. Before I bring on the next panelist, anything else you'd like to share with us that you want to really make sure that people know, their parents know, that children know, or young adults know?
I think the one thing that I'd like to address is that I firmly believe that everybody should have Narcan. Narcan is a reversal for overdoses, so it's going to save lives. It rips fentanyl or other opioids off of the same receptor that is being occupied, and it'll save people's lives. So I don't see any reason why everybody should have it. So if you have somebody who you love who has an addiction, or if you have a teenager, or if you have somebody who you care for that's on pain medication, or if you like to walk in the park and want to help somebody that potentially had an overdose, everybody should have it. It's life-saving, and it's not up for question for me. And I think the one thing, it's easy to administer. It's not going to hurt other people. It only works on the mu opioid receptors. It doesn't work on the heart or anything like that. I think that it's time that we all think deeply about making this something that we have next to our Band-Aids and our Tylenols.
Well, thank you. We will talk about that access. And also Lori writes in that naloxone will be available over the counter without a prescription within the next 1 to 2 weeks. So that is a big moment, a big breakthrough. Lastly, if people want to learn more about brain chemistry, the effect of fentanyl opioids on brain chemistry, is there your website or a website we can direct them to, or maybe you can put something in chat and I can get it out later if you think of something.
Sure. I highly recommend looking at SCOOP, the SCCOOPP, Santa Clara County Opioid Overdose Prevention Project. They have the best website out there.
Say it again, SC.
It's Santa Clara County Opioid Overdose Prevention Project, SCOOPP.
Okay, great. And I'm sure Supervisor will probably talk about that. Okay, good. We're going to bring you back later. Thank you, Dr. McNerney. I'd like to now bring up Superintendent Nancy McGee and Supervisor Otto Lee. Supervisor Lee is in District 3 on the Santa Clara County Board of Supervisors. That includes Sunnyvale, Milpitas, and northern neighborhoods of San Jose, including Alviso, Berryessa. He's also an IP attorney and a veteran, a retired U.S. Navy commander and Bronze Star recipient, former Sunnyvale mayor and council member, and father as well. Since joining the board, he's been a leader on mental health and substance use treatment, and one of the reasons we're excited to have him here today, as well as ending homelessness, veterans affairs, and climate action. He has spearheaded efforts to expand access to Narcan kits and training, which I'm sure he'll tell us about, along with expanding treatment services and prevention measures. Nancy McGee is the superintendent of schools in San Mateo County, bringing over 39 years of educational experience and leadership. And so she's runs the County Board of Education and provides assistance to our 23 public school districts in San Mateo County. And she helped create and lead the Coalition for Safe Schools and Communities, which developed and implemented emergency response and suicide prevention protocols, an active student threat assessment, and a naloxone toolkit, and provided training for educators in prevention of sexual exploitation of students, all now the gold standard in San Mateo County. She was superintendent of the year in 2022. I was just telling her, I haven't talked much, but during COVID, we were talking, I think, every day. So it's wonderful to have you both here today. I'd like to invite you both to make some opening remarks. Maybe Supervisor Lee, do you want to start?
Well, first of all, thank you so much, Senator Becker, for your leadership on hosting this really important town hall. Fentanyl is no joke. This is something that we are really surprised to see how powerful this opioid has been and how it affected our community. Here's the thing. The issue of fentanyl is different because let me put it this way. We've had drug addiction problem, and we deal with these addictive and destructive drugs for not just decades, but centuries. Opium was first sold by the British to Chinese in the mid-1800s, and that was the reason we had the Opium War and Hong Kong being a British colony for 100 years. We've dealt with heroin, we've dealt with cocaine, we've dealt with crack, and then of course opioids. This past decade, methamphetamine, right? Just to name a few, right? These are all very, very highly addictive drugs, and morphine. Fentanyl is actually different. It is far more powerful, potent, and is so cheap that we have never seen, right? Something I believe the street price on one of these pills now is about $5 to $7 only. And then the dealers are grinding these fentanyl pills, mixing it with other drug cocktails to give them that so-called extra boost of high, right? And that, I think, has a lot to do with why we're seeing these overdose of fentanyls in our community. And it's such a dangerous drug that, a lot of times people don't even know they're taking it, they're exposed to it, and even a pencil's tipped could be lethal. In Santa Clara County, we've actually had a case where I believe it's a 2 or 3 month old baby that was OD'd on it. And that shows you how scary this stuff is. How does this baby couldn't even crawl yet? How could that baby be exposed to that, right? So you just have to understand the differences between this versus the other addictive drug that we talk about. And that's why I think this awareness is so important that we need to let everybody know. Number one. And then the other thing that was just mentioned by Dr. Wendy earlier is this thing about naloxone HCl, which is, usually come with a nasal spray, and I'll hold it up like this is what the packet looks like. All right, you can see it. And then this is what the device looks like. It's very easy. And this is really an antidote to fentanyl overdose. And it's very easy to administer and really save lives. And I'll tell you why it's so easy. As you can see this thing here, you put your finger there, you push it right here, and it's just like a syringe and just get in somebody's nose. Just get it in there and bam, push it. Very, very easy to administer. And the key is that it needs to be administered very quickly when somebody overdose, and it can't be self-administered. I do want to share a sad story. Besides being the father of 3 teenage daughters, I have a first cousin that actually died from overdose in September 2020 in the East Coast. And it really hit me hard to know how that really is affecting not only our community, but our family as well, so directly. And so this is an issue that we've been working on for the past couple of years. Our board has pushed and funded the Narcan kits into our jails, into our schools this past year. And earlier, I've also proposed and got the kits into our county libraries as well, following the lead of San Diego County. We certainly need to get these kits into so many places where people gather, like restaurants, like bars, like what we do with AEDs, right, for defibrillators. And I'm very certainly glad that the FDA finally has approved Narcan to be provided over the counter this next couple of weeks to expand access to save lives. This board of supervisors in the county is very aware of this issue. Since January 22, we've called this a public health crisis over mental health and substance use, and partly due to the frightening rise of these opioid overdoses. And the numbers are skyrocketing, not just throughout the country, even right here in Santa Clara County. And we absolutely need to get these resources and put attention to this issue. We are obviously adding more beds to provide treatment beds and all that. And in some ways, I would say, when it comes to the use of Narcans, it really is too late. By then, they are literally dying, and we're trying to help them. So there are so many ways when you do this. Narcan is absolutely the last resort. But besides that, there's so much more that we need to do in order to make sure that the treatment services are made extremely and readily available to people throughout the county. Yeah, thank you again, Senator Becker, for his leadership on highlighting this issue today.
Excellent, thank you. Superintendent.
Yes, thank you, Senator Becker, for having me today. I'm really pleased to be here on behalf of all the school districts in San Mateo County and our 90,000 students. In addition to being nearly 40 years in education, I've been a parent for about 35 years, I guess, at this point. And one of my sons got exposed to oxycodone when he was a senior in high school. And it took impact on him very quickly. Before we knew it, we were dealing with very serious addiction. And so as a parent, I've been through all the many pain points. The beauty of that is he's 6 years in his sobriety now, and in those 6 years has been working in the recovery community, which is amazing how he's been able to give back, but it also keeps me very in tune with how serious the issues are. I can't count the number of people in my son's lives that have passed to overdose. They both live in San Diego. North San Diego County really has quite a serious epidemic of opioid use. When I would take my son to his NA meetings, the lineup of hundreds of kids coming into the meeting was just astounding. Mm-hmm. In San Mateo County, I'm happy to say that we do have Narcan in every school. And after our first distribution, and that counts public schools and private schools, all schools in San Mateo County, we haven't been, no schools have asked us for resupply. So we're seeing very little actual use among our K-12 students. That doesn't mean it's not out there and that kids are at risk. They're really at risk if they're using other substances and at risk of accidental poisoning by a laced drug. We have lost kids in our county to accidental poisonings. As recently as last spring, we lost an 8th grader in the North County to an accidental poisoning. But, youth behavioral health really took a huge hit during COVID. The isolation and shock of such an extreme emergency for our young people is showing and manifesting itself in so many ways. So we don't want our kids turning to recreational drugs to help ease the pain of their anxiety, stress, or depression. We've really got to invest in the mental health care supports and systems for young people. And we want to make sure that our schools are places of belonging, inclusion, positive school climate, with lots of activities and options for kids to be around caring adults. They really need to be immersed in environments of caring adults from the time they're up out of bed in the morning till the time they're heading to bed. And so we have I'm very proud of the Narcan program. We've been able to train all our schools. It means the capacity and knowledge of our teachers and our principals and our adults supporting those schools have really learned a lot. I agree with Dr. McNerney that we have to lessen the stigma of using Narcan and having that available. But also the fact that if fentanyl had been out on the street back when my son was in high school, I don't think he would be alive. And so the extreme potency of the substances that are out in the community today are a very serious risk to our young people. One great thing about young people is they're really smart and capable folks, and I do think they're talking about it, but we do have to help parents who may be more uncomfortable having those conversations with their kids. They can be hard conversations. And for me, it took me 3 or 4 years even to put the word, addict together with my own son. But we have to get past that and understand that we've got to put protections in place. Just like when you're at a pool, you see, life rings, buoys around the pool deck because we know that there's a risk of drowning. We have to put those life buoys in our communities for our kids when they face community danger. So I'm happy to be here and interested in the conversation ahead.
Yeah, well, thank you both. Thank you for that, the work you're doing and the personal testimony as well. When you, the Narcan in school, how does it work? And I was thinking my son's in leadership at one of our large local high schools. How does it work? In the sense, is it really the adults who are restricted, or the kids informed about it, or where to go, or how does it work? Do you know?
Well, this is new. So we rolled this out last January. So just maybe, 9 months ago or so. So we really want to empower our school staff, our school nurses, our school leaders, our coaches with how to use the device. And Supervisor Lee, you made a great statement about how easy it is to use. People shouldn't be scared of it. You can't hurt anybody if you do it, administer it accidentally. There's no harm that can be done by administering Narcan. So the first thing is helping our schools, the leaders and adults in the schools understand how it's working inside that school, where they're located, where you can access them. And then I do know that I think the movement is coming where young people will have pretty ready access to Narcan for themselves. And I do think, as you said, it will be available over the counter in just a few weeks. But I do know through the libraries and other community partners that they're administering or distributing those directly to young people. And I think everyone should have a box or two of Narcan in their car, in their purse, because you never know where you'll be in the community where it may save a life.
Yeah. And we do have a few bills. I mentioned Senator Portantino, my colleague, has a bill to require each campus of a K-12 public school, community college, CSU, and UC to maintain unexpired doses of Narcan, as well as stadiums, concert venues, amusement parks. Again, as usual, we're ahead of the game here in our counties, but did want to let people know about that, as well as Assemblywoman Ortega from the East Bay has a bill around health coverage. And I should have clarified, Narcan is the brand name really for naloxone. So just I've used those interchangeably. I just want to be clear on that. Supervisor Lee, what are the resources can you talk about? Dr. McNerney mentioned the which we'll get out to people as follow-up, the Scoop website that she said is one of the best, which is great. Any other thoughts you have on resources that you want to make sure people know about?
Oh, we have so many different programs in the county, and sometimes it's almost like alphabet soup. I'll try to go through a few of them of what we have. For example, one of which is just simply.
Oh, wait, you went back on mute. Yeah,
Sorry
sorry.
about that. Yep. So I was just talking about the harm reduction program. It's actually a program to help folks, offering them like a bridge to treatment, and having access to clean equipment. For example, they also help promote safe disposal methods to make sure that the drugs, like say people like finally I try to not use it, that they don't fall into the wrong hands. So that's one important program that our county has. Other areas that we have as well. We have our behavioral health services department that is using the funds that we received that everybody heard about, the opioid settlement funds, into various prevention projects and also public communication campaign to raise the awareness. There's the settlement fund expenditure plan. We're going to be talking about how we're going to spend the money to do these work. And again, there's so many departments. One of the things that we're also doing that we're very proud of, for example, with the organization called Pathways, has provided, and they're actually expanding the services from 15 detox beds, we call social detox, to increase another 30 beds coming through with the new funding they have just received from the state, so that we can increase the capacity of individuals who seek the detox services to be immediately able to receive services. Right now, from our data, it looks like they do have like a couple of beds a day that is still made available. So there really isn't a wait. So technically speaking, when people are seeking those detox services, and especially a lot of times we find out inpatient really helps better, especially immediately in the beginning, for days to get them off the cycle. The fact that they could get instead of having to wait, because as we know, when there's a wait list, say somebody wants to get into the services, if you make them wait 2 days, 3 days, they might change their mind. So we need to catch them at the moment when they are willing, ready and willing to get into the program, to get them in there. So I'm glad to say that we do have those services and beds available. We just need to make sure that we do a better job connecting them to the services quickly, to seek those help. And we the program I mentioned, Pathway, just one of many. But the thing is, we have many ways of doing this. They're inpatient programs, and they also outpatient programs as well. In addition, we are actually trying to talk to San Francisco. I was just there a couple months ago to look at their have a detox program in a mobile van system where they go around and provide other type of methadone and type of services, to see if this is a model that we could emulate also in Santa Clara County as well. As we know, the drug dealers is everywhere. So why shouldn't the county be making the services also available everywhere to people? Because a lot of times, whether it's the unhoused encampments, we know that drug use is pretty rampant in some of those locations, and we really need to provide those services. And a lot of these services also seeing that the issue of unhoused, issues of mental health, issue of substance abuse are actually quite tied hand in hand in some ways. So we really need to be out there to make sure that these services or Narcan kits are made widely available to really save lives.
Yeah, well, thank you. And that is important. We are looking to, as you said, and glad some of it's now getting down now to the county level, but providing money for mental health beds. So mental health and substance use and detox beds. And that will go hand in hand with some of the legislation we're working on around care court and as well as the governor's ballot measure, which we put on the ballot in 2024, which is about 10,000 more mental health beds across the state. And again,
one thing I want to just mention to Senator, if I may, for another minute, is that not only are we coordinating with the county office of education to train the school district staff how to use these Narcan kits I talked about, right? In addition, I would just want to tell people, because of the fact that these kits are so easy to use, please don't wait till training before you use it. I think people should understand that, because how easy this is about saving lives. If somebody's on the ground, they are unconscious, and you think they might be overdosed, do not say, I don't have the training and therefore I can't touch it. go ahead and administer it. It's not difficult to use because you right there could save a life. And there are times that one Narcan is not enough. Sometimes it takes multiple. So I just want to let people know. Each of the boxes I showed earlier right now usually come with a kit of two. They usually like 2 kits and sees that 2 kits, right? 2 pack. So I just want to get that point across for folks to understand that it's easy to use and that sometimes you need multiple, not just leave somebody lives. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you both. We had Danielle wrote in that nurses and counselors at JESD are all being trained. Julie wrote about the Sunnyvale Library has a great book called it's called Fentanyl, about kind of the history there. And there's a few other questions that have been raised in the chat that we will address as we go along. So we're going to move ahead to our next segment that we're going to invite everyone else back after that, and we'll engage in some more discussion. So thank you both.
Thank you.
So I'd like to invite up Ed Turnan and Liz Walker, and we're just so thankful for you both to be here. Ed is a husband, father, and businessman. In May 2020, he lost his 22-year-old son, Charlie, who was poisoned by a counterfeit prescription pill. Since that time, Ed and his wife, Mary, have dedicated themselves to informing young people about the new risks of self-medication and recreational drug use in the age of synthetic drugs like fentanyl. The Turnans have formed a nonprofit called Song for Charlie, where they create and distribute fentanyl awareness and drug education materials online, on campus, and via social media. Their programs are designed to provide useful, fact-based resources to young people, families, and educators with the goal of reducing drug use and encouraging healthier strategies for managing stress. And Liz Walker, Liz is a San Carlos resident who lost her 17-year-old son, Colin, to fentanyl poisoning on August 29th of 2021. Since Colin's death, she has been dedicated to educating young people. There he is. She's been dedicated to educating young people about the dangers of fentanyl-laced drugs and the importance of getting help for mental health issues. Professionally, Liz works at the Stanford Graduate School of Business. Welcome, both of you. Thank you for being here, for the work that you are doing to turn your own personal tragedies and situations into education to save the lives of so many others. So thank you both, and just like to invite you both to make some opening remarks, and then we'll have a little discussion.
Sure. I will start. Thank you, Senator Becker, for hosting a very important town hall, and you've covered a lot. I just want to briefly say, Colin, I think, had the perfect storm around him about things that we've discussed on this call. He was completely isolated during COVID. He was someone who already had depression and anxiety going in, but cut off from any adult activities, interactions with friends. That was, I always say he did not die of COVID, but COVID certainly played a part in his death. And we knew he had started smoking pot, and we were very much kind of zero tolerance. So we were testing him throughout. He made it through a year of passing all the tests, and he was almost 18. So we said, okay, I hope you learned your lesson and make better decisions, and substances are not the way to cover up depression, etc. And my husband found him dead in his bedroom on August 29th, 2021. He had taken cocaine, very small amount of cocaine, and it was almost completely fentanyl. And we found in his social media afterwards, under a private area in his social media, just saying that he was addicted, depressed, and wasn't sure what he was going to do. And So that was between, somehow he became addicted to whatever he was taking between April and August. April is when we stopped drug testing him. So to Dr. McNerney's point at the beginning, I think whatever he had and had fentanyl in it, it addicted him quickly, and he was in way over his head and didn't feel that he could ask for help. So that is his story.
Thank you for sharing that and for creating the foundation in his memory. Again, that is helping so many, and hopefully this is today's part of that, to get the word out and to educate more parents and young adults. Let me invite Ed up, and then we'll talk about some of the resources and treatment and thoughts that you have. Go ahead, Ed.
Thank you, Senator Becker, and all the panelists and guests and attendees here today. And Liz, it's always good to see you. Liz and I have done some work together at schools, raising awareness, and on a personal level, support each other in our loss. It's a club that no parent wants to belong to. Our story is a little different. The Colin story and Charlie's story are very useful because Charlie's the fake pill story. He was self-medicating with what he thought was a Percocet. He died at Santa Clara University in May 2020, early COVID. That's my connection to kind of Silicon Valley. We're a big legacy family there, and we work with the tech firms and social media. So, Colin is doing what he thought was cocaine, so a recreational drug that was contaminated with fentanyl. And these are the different ways that young people are dying today. And the way we describe it in our talks and our materials is that when we were growing up, the drug landscape was kind of like the education was about a journey, and the risk was you'd get off on the wrong path and bad things would happen down the line. Now, the landscape today for our kids is more like a minefield where your first, second, or third step out there could be your last if you don't know what's going on. So we've really focused on getting the word as directly to young people as we can through schools and social media posts and so forth. We've recently expanded that work to develop a tool with the help of funding from the Department of Healthcare Services. It's a portal for parents called the New Drug Talk, Connect to Protect. And I'd love to talk more about that. What our research shows is that it's very important for parents to have this conversation, but many parents feel ill-equipped to have the conversation in the home about the new drug landscape. So that's what we're all about at the moment.
Good. Well, actually, maybe you could go into that a little bit. And as a parent myself, I'm extremely interested. Tell us a little bit more about that conversation. I'm sure as parents, we've all tried to have some, most of us tried some version of it, but
yeah,
probably inadequately in many ways.
Yeah, I think about it this way. We call it the new drug talk. And what's new about it? Well, the drugs and the talk are both new. So chemicals dominate the drug landscape today, and that's a mega trend that's not going to go away. And the current generation, our kids, are going to be dealing with that for the rest of their lives because chemicals are way more profitable than plants when used as raw materials for illicit drugs. They're like all profit. I mean, pressing pills is like printing bills. It's all money, right? So
yeah, as the supervisor said, that's one thing that I didn't, was sort of new to me as well. I started looking at this a couple of years ago. It's just how cheap these, whether it's meth or whether it's, these pills, they're just so cheap.
Yeah. And, as a businessman, it's easy for me to think about supply and demand, dynamics. You don't need land, you don't need water, you don't need people to work the land. Shipping costs are way lower because it's less bulky. The costs of chemicals, if you need more fentanyl, you don't have to go grow more fentanyl plants. You just mix up the precursor chemicals, put on a night shift, and you add some more, and you've got more chemicals. And so the law of supply and demand is when the supply of any commodity is essentially unlimited, the cost goes to zero. So that's the economic reality we're facing in the new drug landscape. And so we need to equip our kids to understand that what they're taking out there is not based on plants. It's a chemical, the mixtures of which, as was stated earlier, are unknown and unknowable and untestable. I've spoken to someone who's been in the harm reduction space for decades. And he said that, 10 years ago, when people would submit samples of their street drugs to like an independent testing lab that this harm reduction group would run, the average number of components in a sample would be 2 point something or 3.2 or something like that. Now the average is approaching 8 different chemical compounds and fillers in these drugs. It's chemical stew.
Wow.
So the drugs have radically changed. But the other thing is, we understand now very well the flaws of the just say no, abstinence only approach. And drug education has moved more to a just say no, KNOW, knowledge is power type of philosophy. And so we know more about how the adolescent brain develops and the neuroscience, right? Like Dr. McNerney was talking about earlier. And we need to incorporate that and equip parents to understand how kids take in this messaging. How do you understand the signals? Is it a good time to bring it up, or should I wait till later? How do I start a dialogue and listen to my kids and find out what's going on with them and connect as much as I can? That's kind of what we're trying to put out with the new Drug Talk Connect to Protect. And it's an online resource with videos, and there's a 30-minute video that, I think I encourage every parent to go and give us your email address. We'd like to be able to tell the Department of Healthcare Services how many people are downloading the video, and watch that 30-minute video, and you'll really get a good, deep understanding of what's going out there with some ideas of how you can talk to your kids about it.
Good. Well, after this, we'll be sending out info, and it's a couple 100,000 people on my email list, and we'll make sure we include that link as well. A couple questions are coming in the chat. Maybe take a couple now and then see. Pam wrote, we talk about how this is sold on TikTok or on social media. How, she's asking, how does that work? Any insight into that, or is it just people that end up start direct messaging, or I don't know, anything that's about. Yeah,
I will take that, because I think it's a really good point. I think there was a question in the chat too before, kids going up to Daly City or meeting where the adult drug dealers are. Getting drugs from Snapchat, TikTok, Instagram, so many different, any kind of social media. It is easy as getting a pizza delivered to your doorstep, which is, now we know. We felt sorry for Colin because he wasn't going anywhere. He didn't really have any friends, but at least we thought he's safe in our house. And so a lot of these social media channels, it is one thing I think we should have more pressure on the social media channels, just the way they take child porn off. They should be kicking drug dealers off. And I know Song for Charlie has been working very much with the companies to detect, because these kids, you think your kids, we're raising our children with something that we weren't brought up with. They're walking around with this computer. And after my son died, the messages I could see of just, hey, this catch me here. I just got kicked off Snapchat, but you can catch me on Instagram. And here's the menu of all the things I'm selling. There has to be a better way. Mm-hmm. And if it's like whack-a-mole, though, because if that is taken care of, there's another secret message. I had even gone through my son's phone when he was alive, just because he was acting strange. But what I didn't know, that there was, even within Snapchat, something that said for my eyes only, and that you needed another code to get into. So it's tricky, right? And so I think the social media is a big problem. What I wanted to just add, because I know there's so many parents out there that think Ed and I become kind of, and parents like us, it's like every parent's worst nightmare. And I don't want anyone else to join this group, but there will be. But I think people say, well, what is there anything that you could have told Colin, or, and I think that's the thing. Parents can be scared to death about what is out there. kids are the ones that are going to have to really understand, like, this isn't a judgment on you taking drugs, etc. It is this, you don't know what you're taking, you're not getting what you're buying. And even though you may want to relieve pain or just have a party, it could be that that's it. You don't get another chance. And I've worked with, and Ed and I both worked with a student at Stanford who was very open. He said, you know, my friends are probably not going to stop taking party drugs, but we are going to create a culture where, one thing we haven't talked about, we're going to create a culture where all drugs are tested. And they're going to use fentanyl testing strips and test their drugs and look out for their friends. And much like in the 80s, when it was like AIDS was such an epidemic, and, you know, people who thought, well, that'll never happen to me, people started handing out condoms. You know, places like Stanford, they're making fentanyl testing strips available, because although Narcan in the school is a great idea, and I agree that everyone should have Narcan, and I just sent my youngest off to school with Narcan. Narcan is, as I think the supervisor said, by the time you get there, the person probably is already addicted if they've had fentanyl. So it's how to prevent fentanyl from ever getting in your system. And that's what kids have to understand. Kids are the main audience. They're like, look, here's what happens if you go and buy these drugs and you have no idea what's in them. If you don't die, most likely you will get addicted very quickly, and promise you don't want, here's what an addict looks like. Here's what your life could look like. I don't want to think that that's what would have happened to Colin if he hadn't died. But just like the superintendent shared, you know, it happened. And if fentanyl had been around when her son, you know, was exposed to these things, who knows? So it's like, kids are smart, and they do need to understand, and what's the best way to get that information. A lot of times it's not Ed and I, you know, the 56-year-old, you know, adults saying, boom, but the way he does the presentation, I have to say, it's like going, here are the facts. Here's what happens to your brain. Here's how quickly it happens. This isn't your fault. You didn't create this problem, but you better know everything about it because it's out there, and now you have to deal with it.
Yeah. Thank you for that. And you mentioned test strips, and I'll bring this back when we bring everyone back up in a minute too, but any quick, like, how do they work, or how, and then we'll talk more about access when we bring everyone back. But since you mentioned test strips.
Yeah, and Liz said so much there. Thanks, Liz. There's a lot of good stuff there.
Yeah,
we're unwilling experts, Liz and I, right? Through our lived experience, we've learned about this issue more than we ever wanted to. Test strips are a really good harm reduction tactic. I believe for adults, they should be like on behind every bar in the country. And in some states, they're still illegal, considered drug paraphernalia, which I think is changing, but not quickly enough. There was a question in the chat earlier about, is there a way to test pills? And that gets tricky because technically there's a theory that, you know, uneven dosing is the whole problem with these pressed pills. So you can test a powder. You can, you know, technically you can shake up a baggie of powder and make sure the fentanyl is easily distributed, take a small sample out, dissolve it, use the test strip, as long as you get the dilution right, and it will detect whether fentanyl is there in very small concentrations. They work. The simple answer is they work. With a pill, the idea is once you pressed that powder and compacted it into pill form, the distribution of fentanyl in that tablet is locked in place. If you just scrape a little off or break it in half, you might have a spot where there's no fentanyl or no fentanyl one pill, but the other baggie of 10, the other 9 are loaded with fentanyl. So that's called the chocolate chip cookie effect, where you can imagine a cookie has chocolate chips someplace, and in some places there's no chocolate chip. So what we tell kids in our messaging is there's no reliable way to test a pill, and the real useful, actionable pro tip takeaway from that is, if a pill is presented to you by someone and someone says, my guy tests his pills, that's not true, because you have to destroy a pill to test it for fentanyl. So pills are a little tricky. Fentanyl test strips work. They should be widely available, in my opinion. No one should bring any cocaine to a party, whether you're 21 or 41, that doesn't also bring the test strips. These are cultural changes that need to happen in the age of the chemical drug landscape. Pills, testing pills, still tricky. We don't have an answer for that yet.
Yeah. Well, let's bring you, first of all, again, thank you so much, both of you. We're going to keep you on here. Let's bring everyone back and get to a few of these other questions that we have, because a lot of people wrote in, and just so we all know, we've already heard a lot of stories, but one person wrote and shared she tragically lost her son to fentanyl in 2020. Neighbor shared her story about how young people live next door to her in San Mateo succumbed to accidental ingestion of fentanyl. Danielle and Maria asked about how to talk to teens about prevention and how to, and I think that's really, Ed, that's really, so tell us again the site, and we'll.
The newdrugtalk.org. It's also linked at songforcharlie.org, which is our main site. Some of the things we've learned in our research as we launched this effort was there's a disconnect. Our survey that we just did had like almost 70% of parents said, well, I've talked to my kids about this issue. And about 28% of kids, most of the kids said, my parents have never talked to me about this.
Right.
So if the conversations are happening, they're not landing. And some of the things, if you think about, I see questions in the chat about how to connect with kids and how to talk to kids about this. We heard a couple of things early on as we developed our messaging that I'll just mention real quick. One is be honest. Don't lie to them. No exaggeration and scare tactics. This is the information age, and they are fact checking you on their phone while you're talking. So, you really have to be careful and just present this almost like a public health warning. I'm concerned about you and your friends. There's a lot of bad stuff going on out there. I'm starting to learn this. What have you heard about it? Let's learn about this together. The other thing is to appeal to their peer affinity. What's the most important thing to a high school person? Their friend group. So instead of saying to a young person whose frontal lobe is not yet developed and they believe they're bulletproof, instead of saying you need to be careful, you say you need to make sure your friends know what's going on, because you don't want anything bad to happen to your friends or your cousin, right? And that seems to land better. So there's stuff like that on this portal and on our site that we hope helps parents update the way they have this conversation. Yeah.
That is super helpful. And Superintendent McGee and Supervisor Lee, you're coming back to the conversation. A few comments on what, and Dr. McNerney, comments on anything we've discussed in the last couple segments, please bring it up, as well as test strips. What can you tell us? Because I hear a lot about test strips, but I still, personally, from my own standpoint, don't really know where they're available, for example. So, and if either of you have thoughts on that, or just and other thoughts on some things that have been shared.
I do have one comment and observation, and that is, thank you, Ed and Liz, for sharing your story and for all the work and advocacy you're doing. But I do want to address the fact that while we have the K-12 system we have mechanisms to educate and support and keep eyes on kids. We still lose those kids, but I think the greater risk is in the transition age youth population. That's the 18 to 26-year-olds. We're seeing higher use in that population in San Mateo County. And you can imagine that's when they're, graduating from a system where they've been with the same kids and families and routines for almost 18 years. Now they're sort of heading off into all these different directions. They're in colleges where they might be freshmen, sophomores, and not have made friends the way they need to, or had a chance to really settle in that community yet. So those transition periods, especially for those older young people, is really critical. And I do think we need to explore ways to make sure that population is getting what they need as well.
Yeah. No, I hear you about that. We've been in some of those transition periods recently, and I can see that. That's a big deal. So Rosalie, any thought on fentanyl strips and where can folks, or test strips, where folks can get them in Santa Clara County?
Absolutely, yeah. We've been working with our school district as well to get the material out, and through our public health department, we are distributing them like we do the Narcan kits. So, for example, in unhoused encampments, we'll drop some of those off. But the thing is, the test kits is really needed everywhere. Bars and restaurants, those are all necessary places where those strips need to be there. So we are not doing enough of it, and we're certainly pushing more of those to get out to people and educate the kids about it. You know, kids try new things, right? They are very curious, and that's just the nature of learning, of growing up. We've all been there. You know, in the old days, you OD'd on marijuana brownies, right? What's the effect of that? Not a big deal, right? Because of brownies, because we're talking about marijuana. This is a complete different world, right? That our kids are living in, and that's what I think makes it so urgent. Why we need to get these educational information out to our schools, our children, and our kids, and young adults too, like Nancy was talking about. That's absolutely true. And you know, in terms of statistics, I mean, we are talking about nationwide, 4 out of 5 Gen Z drug deaths is a result of fentanyl overdose. That's horrendous. These are really, really big numbers. And you know, the statistics, you know, speak for itself. It's not a local problem. It is a national problem. And you know, and again, I think we really need to fight all. I mean, we should fight supply. We should fight demand, right? I mean, there was somebody on the post talking about, hey, we need to stop this stuff coming from Mexico. Absolutely, no question about it, right? The fact that they're flooding our streets right now, it just shows you that there's so much supply. The fact that they can sell for $5 to $7 a pill, you know that there's a huge amount sitting around that's being used, that's being made available. And so there's certainly the law enforcement side that they need to do that. And I believe our county district attorney actually has decided to charge some of the dealers with like murder type of charges for just selling the drug because of what it does linked to that. But besides that, I think there's so much that we can do from the public health perspective of getting the word out to people, getting the strips out there, getting Narcans out there, and educating kids the danger that they're being exposed to, that, you know, we are now, we didn't expose to those, you know, 20, 30 years ago when we were teenagers, unfortunately. And how these harm reduction program that we talked about is absolutely crucial in terms of saving lives. You know, besides, since we talk about the test strips, I also talk about, you know, for example, coasters. Apparently, there's some coasters now that when kids are like when you're at a bar, serve a drink, you could pour it, and you can see if there might be drugs in the drinks that's being served. You know, those are all new technology that's being made available, and then we just need to make sure that our young people and our kids are aware of these things and how they could protect themselves. And then their friends too. And then the other thing about the issue of Narcan, and we talked about it, is, you know, it's not just that they might not use drugs; they should still have them when they're going to a party, because that could be used to save somebody else's lives.
Right.
That's the thing we should promote. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. So I'd like to bring up a few cautionary tales based on the discussion, just 3 kind of important points. First of all, there was somebody in the chat who mentioned that sometimes Narcan after 15 minutes can wear off, and that is absolutely correct. The half-life of an opioid is longer than that of Narcan. So just because you administer it and somebody wakes up doesn't mean that they won't overdose again. So it is critically important for that to call an ambulance and for them to get medical care. So I appreciate the person who brought that up. As far as test strips, unfortunately, with this day of COVID and COVID testing, a positive COVID test looks like the exact opposite as a positive fentanyl test. So you make sure that you read the instructions and that you know exactly what those lines mean with your test. So it's very unfortunate. I think that we need to do better with the test strips. We talked about the chocolate chip problem. People don't want to destroy their drugs to test it. So that's a problem. And it doesn't indicate how much is in there. So we have to be really absolutely use them. We need to know, right? There's no way, no question, distribute them, but use them with education in mind. And I do want to bring up another point about the border, which may make some people a bit angry, but because fentanyl is so potent, you only need a shoebox of fentanyl to get across the border and cause a problem. And I don't see us being able to stop every single shoebox full of fentanyl out there. Should we absolutely try to stop the flow? Yes, but it's not a realistic solution for long term. And also people are going to start making it here. So we need to think about other ways to kind of help with the reduction of supply besides just the border.
Yeah, thank you. Those are all important points, and there are a number of things that people have written in about enforcement, and certainly we are working on that at a state level, both the border and otherwise, sending the highway patrol and others to San Francisco. There was an article recently, they seized enough fentanyl basically kill the whole city, that was seized recently. But unfortunately, as you say, it's so inexpensive, it's so cheap, such small dose, quantities that we can't rely alone on that. Do we need to stop the open air drug markets? I believe absolutely. But we've really focused on the public health because this stuff is going to be out there. We do know that. James asks, and I don't know if there's an answer to this, but he said, what signs as a parent should I look for to determine if my child is using this drug? I mean, are there any, you might just see changes in behavior. I mean, Liz, you mentioned you sort of noticed something, you were concerned, but I don't know, any thoughts for James or?
Yeah, I will answer that because it's something I'm pretty open about. And it's where I think awareness is so much more. Maybe Colin's life could have been saved. So, I mean, he did have extreme change. He went from being kind of a bright and shiny, smiley kid to just negative all the time. We were having him see a psychologist and a psychiatrist who were watching him saying, being a teenager is tough. They're going to act this way. But I would say extreme, changes in mood. The second one that I brought up to the psychiatrist the morning before he died, because I was really worried about him, his mood seemed to be getting worse, is that I told her, I don't understand, like my older son never sweat this much. I go into his room and his sheets are drenched. And that is a sign of opioid withdrawal. I know now that he was trying to get off of it. Had I had the doctor, and maybe now with more awareness, all doctors will say, God, if your kid is just like sweating profusely, soaking their sheets, you might want to check more into that. The other one, in the month before he died, so much candy, lots of sweet stuff. And that's another, now I understand, sign of someone trying to get off. Like if you think about it, you're trying to stop smoking, a lot of people will start eating sugar. I shared all those things with his doctors. They probably thinking that he was doing something with fentanyl was not on their minds. I'm a parent. I was doing the best I can, but those are signs that I think, and maybe Wendy has more, but those are now that I just wish someone had taken seriously, and maybe we can. And then the other thing is, we did take him to the ER. He had taken a Xanax in April, and they did not test him for fentanyl. And I think that's probably where he became addicted. And I even asked the ER, could you? And they said, we don't have those tests available. From my understanding now, all in California, all ERs have fentanyl testing. And if someone is brought in with a drug issue, they're tested. So those are three things. Wendy, you might have more symptoms or that parents could look out for.
It's really unfortunate. There's not like telltale symptoms, right? It's like, is this child of mine being a moody teenager, or do they have an addiction? And it's just such a fine line between the two that really what you have to do is like trust your intuition as a parent. right? Trust your gut, really, really listen. You know your child better than anybody else. And that's the best I can say. And unfortunately, like, nobody talks enough about it to really kind of feel comfortable even discussing it at all. So it's really, really hard question. And I think it breaks my heart that they didn't test your child for fentanyl. That's really bad. And I'm glad to see that they've changed it. And I don't know if you know about what they're doing at Oakland region hospitals, where if somebody comes in with an overdose, they send them home with literature about addiction and about fentanyl, and they give them a Narcan. And I think anybody who has to go to a hospital for an overdose should come back with that literature regardless, like in any hospital ever. I think that would have made a big difference for you guys.
I
And in
want to
terms of
say,
symptoms,
I was going to say that as a parent, it's easy for us to justify sort of the behaviors, or we can always find a reason why maybe you're stressed out about making the basketball team, or you broke up with your girlfriend, so that's why, you're in isolation. But your point, Liz, about extreme changes, a lot of times parents couldn't even imagine that it would be their child involved in using a substance. And I went through that a little bit, like it wasn't even in the realm of possibility. And it was my other son who had to come tell me what was happening. And so as a parent, you have to understand that this is one real thing that your child could have stumbled into and may be trapped in a place where they don't have help or know how to ask for help.
Yeah, and I just saw in the chat that from an anesthesiologist, they gave actually some really good symptoms. And looking back, I think Colin had a lot of them. The other thing, and this is, I remember my best friend from Stanford, her kids were a few years older, and she told me when they were teenagers, and my kids were those sweet cherub, little blondie, just because your kids will lie to you. They will lie to you to your face, and they will lie to you really, really well. And I kind of thought, no, I talk to my kids about drugs. I'm like, my kids will never get in trouble with me if they're honest. We are good parents. He knows he can come to me. And he did lie to us again and again. And that's part of addiction too. So I think there's that line of trusting your gut and wanting to trust your kids. But ultimately, Colin was the only person that could have asked for help and that could have made a different choice, which is why I think what Ed and I are doing as far as talking to kids and like, what is the most effective way? And I tell the students when I talk to them, if my son was in the audience right now, he might be the one who's back in the back row rolling his eyes. But I hope that's not you today, because it's really important information, and because I hope he would have listened and maybe made some different decisions. It's all you can do. Right?
And you're so right, Elizabeth. Thank you for sharing that story, because a lot of times we thought our kids are so good, right? Straight A students, right? Or very well funded, at private school, whatnot, that these are not the kids that would do those things, right? You thought, sorry to break the news to those. As a matter of fact, private schools and schools that are very well funded is exactly where the drug dealers hang out, because those are the kids that could afford the drugs. So we know that's actually something that's been going on for a while, number one. Number two is that unlike, when you see a pattern of drug use, we've had overdose cases of kids like as young as like 13 and 14 literally die the very first time they use it, the first time. And that's what makes a difference about fentanyl that we talked about, is that because this stuff is so potent, right? And the thing is, medically, I believe, is a tolerance on the individual. If they have never exposed to this, even a small amount could become deadly, right? And I think that's what makes fentanyl such a dangerous drug, that sometimes you could think a pattern, and sometimes our parents or we beat ourselves up for it. But sometimes it's the drug itself being so powerful, so potent, that they'll get to your kids before you even have any symptoms. So I would say walking symptoms, of course, is important, but I think it's so important to hit, even your perfect kids, your perfect, straight A kids, they have good friends, even that, they are still very vulnerable without us, giving them that coaching and letting them know. And then following up on that, I just want to give some addresses here in Santa Clara County. our fentanyl test strips in Santa Clara County, you could get it from our medication assistant team treatment clinic on our 2425 Ambrook Lane in San Jose. We have the Alexian Clinic and 2101 Alexian Drive in East San Jose. And in the South County, we also have 90 Highland Avenue in San Jose as well. These are all free. That one's St. Martin, I'm sorry, 90 Highland Avenue, St. Martin. I just want to give these addresses out to people to get the word out. And certainly that's not enough. We need to get more available, but I just want to answer that questions earlier. Thank you.
Yeah, and we'll send some resources in San Mateo out as well. I'll mention a few others as well. For San Mateo County, the Access Call Center for Substance Use and Resources is 1-800-686-0101, 1-800-686-0101. And Santa Clara County Access, 1-800-704-0900, 704-0900. And there's a federal line for treatment and referral, which is 1-800-662-4357, 1-800-662-4357, and asks that if there's a way to take this presentation or parts of this to city councils or other things that, we'll certainly talk to my district director, Nicole Fernandez, and see if that's something other councils are interested in, or even just a few minutes to mention, some of the resources that we talked about here today. There are other questions, but we have covered a lot of them. Stephen asked about the social media platforms that you mentioned, Liz, and there was a bill. We did have a bill on that this year that became what's called a 2-year bill. So we'll continue to work on that one about holding social media platforms accountable and trying to get this information off of there. And again, once we're in the last few weeks of session right now, but we'll update people on whether some of these other bills pass around Narcan access and some of the other pieces. With that, I'd like to give everyone a chance just to 30 seconds or a minute to give some closing thoughts. I just want to thank all of you. I mean, to me, this has been extraordinarily powerful. I'm just so appreciative of all of you, and just thank you very much. Maybe we'll go ahead and order we started. Dr. McNerney, do you want to start with any closing thoughts?
Sure. I think the big message that I want to bring home here, as I was thinking about this today, is that we are in kind of the most innovative region of the world. And I think if we come together and we talk about the biology and the sociology and the policy, this is where we're going to come up with a solution that'll work. So I hope everybody on this call is completely motivated just to get busy, get thinking, and start saving lives.
Thank you. Very well said. Supervisor Lee?
Everybody should have this. Make it readily available. It's in my trunk.
Yeah.
I leave it there. I believe not just the police officers and firefighters, I think everybody really should have this available because it's so prevalent. You just don't know when this will come in handy to save somebody's lives. And I think our kids should be aware of that as well, so they could bring it with them to schools, especially parties, right? This is where things happen. People try funny things. So I think it's so important to get that out there because it really does save lives.
Yeah, I'm going to get one. I don't have one. I'm going to get one. Thank you. Superintendent McGee. Nancy.
I would just say that, the social media issue is twofold because youth are on social media, and that's a place where we can reach them with positive messages and information. And at the same time, we've got to pursue in this state and in this country, and thank you for your, efforts to write some legislation about this, about how do we put some guardrails up in the online space to help our youth be safer. And other than that, the safe and supportive schools effort, it matters that kids feel belonging, that they feel a sense of inclusion, that we have representation of our educators and our curricular materials that include and show and reflect everyone in a healthy way, and that parents really need to be courageous in this world and learn how to speak, about hard things with kids, and help each other as well to be strong in managing through the challenges of being a parent of a teenager in 2023.
Yeah. Amen. Amen to that. Liz?
I would just say, talk to your kids, and better yet, the more we can get kids talking to each other, and hearing the stories of kids that are not here anymore because of a really bad choice they made, not knowing what was in what they were taking. I think that might have the biggest impact on kids.
Thank you. Ed?
Yeah, thanks everyone. Great stuff. I'm going to weigh in on the social media thing as well, because I work directly with the social media companies.
Okay.
I'm on Snapchat's Global Safety Advisory Board. We work with TikTok, Google, YouTube, Meta. And I want just to make clear that the social media companies and tech companies are engaged. They're actually working behind the scenes. There's stuff they're doing that they can't really talk about, like sharing signals across platforms and coming up with procedures to combat this whack-a-mole stuff where dealers just bounce from platform to platform. We all want them to do more. Legislation is part of that, and so is kind of cooperation from the inside out, getting them to do that. And the last thing that I'll close with is kind of philosophically, my wife, Mary, and I decided that we would just try to do what we can. It's a big, complicated issue with China and the border and big pharma. And it's like, what can the average citizen really do? What can we control here at home in this country, in our county, and in our city? And that is what we're all saying is, have the conversations, study up, learn the facts, cut through the white noise and the misinformation, have factual, honest conversations as families and in schools and as communities. That's what we can control. And that's what's going to have a real impact on the demand side, if we just focus on making each other smarter about this and protecting ourselves from this new risk.
Yeah. Well, so much what you said resonated, especially also, when you said to your kids, you say for yourself, but for your friends, right? Make sure your friends are safe. And I'd love to follow up with you on your work with social media companies to learn what you know, and that would be helpful to me in my efforts. So we'll follow up on that. Especially we'll also be following up, as I mentioned, with an email to my whole list, letting people know about this and some of the discussion and some of the resources that we talked about today. I thought this was incredibly valuable. I'm just so grateful to all of you. We're getting lots of comments in the chat as well, and just thank you all for being here today. And that's it. We'll sign off, and we'll see you in the next town hall. Thanks.